It's a pleasure to have you once again on the link after a break. Welcome back to the link. We promise we will try to be back, and we are back to give you information that you can use and opportunities to power your businesses. The link is brought to you, sponsored by Airtel Uganda, and we want to thank Airtel for associating with the link in order to bring you information you can use. And we look forward to giving you more information. For the difference, the link also was a news segment before. Now it's a program. And that means we have more time. You have had me cry over the many years. Hopefully one day we'll get time. Now we got it. And we even got a sponsor, Airtel. If you want to join Airtel as a sponsor to make sure the link stays on air to give people information that they can use of a business type, please, you're welcome. And for those who have any doubts about the difference between the link and anything else, here we delve deep into things that businesses need to know so that they can make decisions properly around their money and investments. So when you come here, you're going to take away something. If there's nothing to take away, it won't appear on the link, we promise you. So welcome back. In our inaugural show, if you like, at least with the comeback, we're going to discuss the issue of tax measures. Generally, the feeling around the budget was that there was no new tax measures because government tried to introduce a tax on fuel earlier in the proposals, but it was scrapped. Some people say for political reasons, whatever their reasons were, but there was no increase on tax on fuel. So people were like, there are no tax increments. There were tax changes we're going to discuss today, and we promised to discuss issues around business. So we're going to discuss tax measures that were introduced or changed that affect your business. And in the studio, I have a very qualified, eminent person to discuss the issue, Miss Pamela Natamba, a tax partner with PricewaterhouseCoopers. She's going to tell us that. Pamela, welcome.
Thank you, Sam, and good evening, viewers.
Previously, I always say let's start quickly because we don't have time. I'm not in the hurry too much today, but nevertheless, we don't have all the time in the world. Let's take the first change, and that was touted by the minister and the finance ministry. There was a waiver for 3 years on income tax if a business is a startup and it's less than 500 million in terms of investment. So they said, yeah, we are supporting business. First of all, take us through the implication of that, the text of that, and what the implication is.
Okay, thank you, Sam. So yes, you're right. The government has proposed to introduce a waiver, and I say proposed because we have tax amendment bills, which when they are passed into law, then they become implementable.
Okay.
So the proposal is, first of all, you have to be a Ugandan citizen.
Okay.
You need to invest not more than 500 million Uganda shillings, so 500 and below.
Okay.
3, you need to establish your business starting from 1st July 2025 going forward. So businesses established before 1st July 2025 do not benefit.
Does that mean registered as of that date?
Effectively, yes. Effectively, yes. Because how else will you confirm if it's an established business?
So if I'm on 30th June, I don't qualify?
You don't qualify. So you wait for one day to 1st of July 2025. And then the other condition, you're required to file your tax returns and any other business information returns that the Commissioner General or the URA might require you to file. So there are those conditions. And in fact, there's another interesting one that tries to make sure you're not benefiting twice or thrice on one business, second business, third business. So you need not to have benefited from that exemption before. So it should be your first time to benefit from
Was there such an exemption before?
No, this is the first of its kind. So we have had different exemptions before. And I'm sure you have heard Ugandans complain, or the government gives exemptions to foreigners, they don't give to Ugandans. So there are different exemptions if you're in industrial parks, if you're in different types of businesses. But this is the first of its kind for citizens and with the prescribed conditions that I have spoken
Hovering
about.
around that, Pam, on the issue of not having benefited. If it's a new company, but we're the same directors, is that an issue?
Chances are it's going to be an issue because really? The way the law has been crafted is to say your business or your associates should not have benefited.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yes, and now the definition of associates is quite wide. So if the directors are similar, that could be an issue. Those are associates.
So we can't register another company to benefit from this.
Yes, that's the idea. So they're trying to widen the net as much as possible, so that it's not the same people benefiting from the exemption.
Now, you say you must be Ugandan.
Yes.
What does that mean actually? If you know that, if you understand that question, you must be Ugandan. What if I am not born here? What makes me qualify to be a Ugandan? I don't know.
So the act or the bill specifically speaks to a citizen.
Oh, okay.
So it just doesn't say a Ugandan. So you've got to be a citizen. So that's a critical one that needs to be taken care of. So if they are directors of a company, they should be citizens of Uganda. So they don't tolerate partnerships.
You know, I have 90%, 10% is an outsider. It's going to be 100%.
Yes, so this, as far as I can interpret it, is 100% Ugandan. And I guess it's a good thing, and government is perhaps making a statement because of, for example, what I have mentioned, that people have been complaining you favor foreigners over Ugandans. Two, I think when we look at our strategic goals and the direction that Uganda is going, we have consistently said we want to support local businesses, small businesses, monetize the economy. So what I believe we are doing here is to then say, can we find the small startup entities that are owned by citizens of Uganda and support them, and handhold them to grow. And I'm sure you've seen statistics saying that Uganda is one of the most entrepreneurial countries. But again, most businesses do not see their third birthday. So I think this too is to say, okay, how do we make sure we support those businesses and handhold them? And I think the other thing to think about, and maybe one of the things that I have heard people within the public talk about is, but most of these businesses tend to make losses in their initial years. So is this exemption really going to benefit us? Because if I'm making losses, I'm not paying tax anyway in the first place. And I think it's a valid concern. But that said, there are also businesses that do make profits, however small, 10% margins to 15%. So those will benefit because we do have a regime where you can pay tax on the basis of your gross income that you generate, but you can also pay tax on the basis of profit. So this will mainly benefit people that have made profits or people that would have been taxed on their gross income without even taking into account whether they had expenses or not. So I think it's a good initiative. Ugandans just need to be aware of it as they start their businesses after the 1st of July and make sure that they tap into it. I think the other component is, besides supporting businesses to handhold them, reduce the tax burden, it's also going to eventually widen the tax base. Because one of the conditions is you file your return, file other business information that is required by the URA. Now, the moment URA has that information, after your 3 years of the exemption, then they can knock at your door and you're able to pay your taxes. So I think it is going to help, yes, support businesses to survive beyond the first year, second year, third year, but it will also help in terms of then having more people in the tax bracket, hence widening the base. That's
very interesting. And I was thinking, scrutiny. You said business information, so people know. What am I going to be required? Tax filing returns, what is that? I start a new company, what is the taxman expecting from me, apart from being a Ugandan citizen, in terms of business processes? What do they want to know from me so that I qualify for this exemption?
Yes, so there are different types of tax returns. For companies, you have your corporate income tax returns. which speak to your full year of operation. So you file your return. There's what you call a provisional return.
Okay.
6 months into the year.
Return means income, profits.
Yes.
Okay, you were breaking it down.
Okay, so I'll step back. So when you're into business, you're going to prepare your financial statements or records that capture your income, your expenses, your profit.
Okay.
So you're required to keep a record of those and make sure that they are used to file your tax return.
Okay.
So in filing your tax return, you are declaring what were my expenses, what was my income, what was my profit.
Absolutely.
And therefore, what tax should I be paying? So that's the sort of information in broad terms that you have to include in your returns.
Okay.
You file and say this year, for example, if I'm running my business from January to December, in June, I am supposed to file a return telling the URA that based on how my business is going, I expect to pay tax of 100 million this year.
Even if I'm not going to pay it?
Yes. So you make that declaration in June, 6 months into the year. You actually pay. So if you tell them, I think I'm going to make 100 million, then you pay half of it.
Say that again?
So if you tell the URA this year, I anticipate or I expect to make 100 million in profits that are taxable, tax is 30%.
Yeah.
That 100, you pay half of it in June because you're halfway through the year.
I thought I'm exempted.
Now I'm first explaining how the return works ordinarily.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
So end of the year, which is December, the expectation is then you pay
the full tax.
Other half.
Okay.
Or you can say in December that I had said I'm going to make profit of 100, but actually I think it's going to be 150. So you can revise it, the estimate at that point, and then you pay the tax. Or you can even say, I thought it was 100, it's now 80. Reduce it downwards and pay the balance. So what the exemption is then doing is to say, all that we're taking it away. Yes, you'll file your return, but there will be no tax for you to pay because we're exempting you for 3 years.
Thank you, Pam. Now, that is income tax.
Income tax, correct.
Which is on your profits.
Correct.
But I may be required to pay other taxes. Is that correct?
Very
Please
correct.
highlight on that one.
Yes.
Not off the hook.
So tax includes, income tax, which is based on your profits as a business. We do have withholding tax, which is an advance tax. So as I file my returns, they are going to be day-to-day transactions. I supply, I am a professional services supplier. If I supply a professional service, tax services to someone, I bill them, they are going to withhold 6% tax from me before they pay that invoice. Now, ordinarily, without that exemption, you accumulate all that tax that's been withheld from you through the year. Then at the end of the year, as you declare the other corporate tax we're talking about, you offset the 6% that you already paid
to somebody
on
else.
Transactions. Yes. Now, this exemption is going to cover both the corporate income tax of 30% and the withholding tax because they sort of fall within the same category. However, there are things like pay as you earn, employment taxes. You employ people.
Your employees.
Exactly. So this exemption is not for pay as you earn, because remember that tax of pay as you earn, it is me as the employee who is paying. So the government is not exempting your employees or your salary from being taxed. They're exempting the profits of the business from being taxed. VAT is another one. If I am running a business, I'm required to charge VAT. So this exemption is not capturing VAT. I will still have an obligation to charge VAT for as long as the business I am in it qualifies for VAT.
I want to ask more questions, but even as I check my time, I thought we are in the class now here and the questions keep coming. If you need more information on this one, find a tax expert to take you down, because you can see I'm doing a bit of back and forth with Pamela here. For your sake, you guys are out there. But let's move on to another tax issue that came up. External trade infrastructure levy on imports for home use. What does that mean?
Yes. Yes, and I have had still feedback from a number of taxpayers, getting concerned.
And I can ask the graphic guys, please put up that external trade infrastructure levy on imports. Bring the graphic as Pamela explains. Please go ahead.
Yes, so first of all, this is a form of import tax, meaning that it applies to goods that are imported into the country.
From outside.
From outside Uganda.
Yeah.
Ordinarily, infrastructure levy is about funding infrastructure projects, infrastructure development, infrastructure maintenance.
Okay.
So for countries that have implemented infrastructure levy, that's the rationale. We collect this, but it is set aside to fund government infrastructure, public infrastructure, development, maintenance.
Roads, bridges, etc.
Roads, bridges, etc.
Okay.
So with that background, it's a useful levy, but of course it then creates a social expectation, because if you're collecting it here, then I should be seeing better roads, I should be seeing railway network working properly.
SGR.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I am hoping that even as we introduce this, then we are actually using it for that intended purpose. So that is one. Two, this levy has actually been around. It is just that it did not have a legal backing. So in practice, URA has been collecting that levy. And I've heard a bit of noises in the corridors of they were collecting it illegally. What does it mean for the past period? I will leave that for the URA to deal with.
Legitimization.
Yes, so now it has been legitimized. And when they say goods for home use, I think that's another important thing that we need to talk about.
I want to know which ones.
The public might be wondering, what are goods for home use? It's not just consumer goods that you're buying to put in your house, electricals, garments, things.
Shoes, etc.
Shoes. No. So there is a whole load of rules, customs rules that speak to declaration of home use, goods for home use. So it includes everything, even items that are used for industrial, industrial machinery, commercial items, traders down in Chukubo that import stuff to sell. So it applies to.
So this home use is home Uganda, not home my home.
Thank you.
Oh.
So it is home Uganda, it is not home your house, wherever you live. So that's the one aspect that needs to be clear. However, that said, there have been exemptions that have been specifically listed. There are sectors that are historically exempted from import duty, like oil and gas, like mining, like some agriculture, hospitals. So those will still not have to pay infrastructure levy. Certain items of plant and machinery that are used for manufacturing, those will still not pay infrastructure
because they're exempt by law.
Yes, because they're exempt by law. Even certain special government projects, those are also removed. I think what has changed is that whereas the previous one, which was not legitimate, generally said for as long as your import duty is zero. There are items whose import duty is zero. They are zero rated. So the previous implementation was for as long as you're subject to zero duty, you don't pay infrastructure levy. Now they have only listed certain specifics that are excluded. So that means certain raw materials which previously were not being levied, infrastructure levy, are now going to be levied.
So Pamela, in terms of an importer, the importers are paying attention. That means since they have been collecting it, am I going to see an assessment that is going to change if I've been paying it anyway, or it's going to continue the same, only that now they'll tell me we are legitimate?
I think it's going to remain the same. The only difference is going to be on what goods, because like I mentioned, all the zero-rated goods before, the goods that had no import duty, they were not levying. So there are some traders, some companies that are going to receive a levy now of infrastructure that they were not paying.
So those are the ones who must be concerned. We need to move on. Import declaration fee. What is that?
So the two are actually different. So I mentioned infrastructure levy is to support infrastructure development and maintenance.
Graphics, please. Import declaration fee, just show it there.
The import declaration fee, world over, how it is used, it is to support administration costs of customs, processing customs, documentation. So it's supposed to help URA to support. What I know for a fact, one of the things that has driven this introduction is because even other countries within the East African region have similar fees.
Okay.
So from my experience, these countries speak to each other.
Is it going to increase, as time runs out, is it going to increase my cost of importing?
It will, because it's an additional 1% that was not there before. So unlike infrastructure levy that in practice was being implemented 1.5%,
I should expect a 1% increment on everything.
On everything. Again, the keyword, home use.
Even for the import levies, home use.
Yes, home use. With the exception of machinery, those special sectors that I talked about, special government projects, everybody else pays the 1%.
Okay, we have 2 minutes. Can you believe it?
Already.
Waive of interest on paying principal. If I pay the principal, they waive the interest. Is it that easy? Pam, 2 minutes.
Yes. So we've had mixed experiences with the URA, to be honest. We've had waivers being implemented, but we've had situations with the process and how they are implemented. Yeah. So I think what I would like to see with this waiver extended is to work very collaboratively with the URA to make sure that the waiver is actually achieving what it intended to achieve. Because I think the challenge has been, when do you start, counting the tax that I pay today, how is it applied? Is it applied to previous liabilities? And as a result, is it reducing my interest that should be waived?
Yes.
And what should be done? So it's in the methodology of how we compute the interest that is supposed to be waived.
So sometimes I end up paying interest anyway.
Exactly.
Under the same exemption.
Yet there is a waiver, but you end up paying part of that interest that you thought you were going to get a waiver for. So we need to work very closely with the URA to make sure that that is refined and cleared so that people can fully benefit from the waivers intended.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much, Pam. Can you believe that
already?
Even when we have more time, the class cannot complete what we wanted to do. We had like 7 points, but we just touched 4 of them. But we have to sort of end this explanation here. We promise you we are going to bring you more information that you can use on the link. That was Ms. Pamela Natamba, tax partner, PricewaterhouseCoopers, taking us through the new tax measures. If you thought they were not there, they are there, and how they can apply. We spent more time on the first one because it impacts many people who are starting businesses. This show is brought to you by Airtel, and we want to thank Airtel for supporting it and making sure we are here to give you information that you can use. If you want to be associated with this show, you're out there, you think you can sponsor, you have a project, or you have a program, you think it fits this, you are welcome to speak to us here at NTV. We hope we added value to you. My name is Samuel Setumba, your host, and we'll come back next Tuesday. That was the link.